Missing persons cases wreak havoc on the families of individuals who have vanished, and very often, these cases never reach a conclusion, leaving loved ones with no idea where these missing people ended up. But some cases have unexpected endings that bring seemingly impossible cases to a surprising close. Number 5. When Christina Davison failed to show up for her shift at a Whataburger in Kilgore, Texas in May of 2014, she was reported as a missing person by Melody Addy, a coworker. Kilgore police immediately started searching for her and found her purse near Loop 390 in Marshall, but Christina, her cell phone, and her car, a black 90s model Toyota Camry, were never found. When police searched her home, they found signs of a possible struggle, and the FBI joined in on the search, treating the case as a possible abduction. They didn't rule out the possibility that she met with foul play and was no longer alive. Christina's ex-husband, Craig, was under suspicion and named a person of interest as he was arrested for a previous charge of domestic violence against Christina. But he was later released after a judge found that there was no probable cause to keep him detained. Police would later learn that Christina had told family and friends that she was afraid of Craig and that he would hurt her if he found out where she was staying. Shortly before she went missing, she told family members that he had indeed found her, and she was afraid that something bad was going to happen. Kilgore Police Detective Trey Portwood stated that he didn't believe Christina was still alive and that he was sure someone had ended her life, though he had no evidence to back up his claim. Then, on the 15th of May, a woman was arrested in Lexington, Kentucky after being pulled over at a gas station. When police checked her ID, they found that it was Christina, and she was arrested on a felony warrant for possession of an illegal substance. She'd been living in Kentucky since going missing and planned her own disappearance in order to get away from her abusive ex-husband. Number 4. Craig Williamson, a 46-year-old man from Wisconsin, married 41-year-old Christine Reinhardt on the 7th of October, 1990, after only meeting her a month before. But it was love at first sight, and the couple was sure they would be happy together. They decided to start a fish farming business, an industry which they knew to be lucrative, and bought a farm in Wisconsin, Christine's home state. They started farming tilapia with the aim of selling the fish across the country. On the 28th of August, 1993, Craig traveled to Colorado Springs, driving an old school bus with the intent to buy fish from a fishery in Alamosa. Christine was concerned about him driving all that way, as he had suffered a concussion just a few weeks earlier. Upon arrival in Colorado Springs on the 30th, Craig rented a car that he used for business appointments. He later phoned Christine from his motel room, asking her to give him a call the next morning to wake him up for his drive home. When she called the next day, she got no answer and immediately knew something was wrong. She contacted police and reported him as a missing person. When police arrived at his motel room, they found most of his belongings were still there. The bus was still parked outside his room, and although they didn't find any signs of a struggle, they treated his disappearance as a possible homicide. The next day, Craig's credit cards were found on a shelf at a grocery store in El Paso, Texas, and a few weeks later, his rental car was found in Juarez, Mexico. Christine started posting missing persons flyers and begged with the media to cover her husband's disappearance. She visited homeless shelters and badgered police for information on the case. 2 weeks after his disappearance, a retired nurse came forward and told police that she'd seen a disheveled-looking man resembling Craig on a train while traveling from Montana to Washington. She was sure that it was in fact Craig, and recalled that he spoke a lot about fish tanks. Given her training, she told police that she was certain that he had a head injury. Christine went to Washington to search for him, and for 6 weeks, she traveled along the train's route to look for him. Then in July of 1995, Craig saw himself on the show Unsolved Mysteries, and he realized that he was a missing person. He would tell police that he was mugged in Colorado Springs and, due to his concussion, developed amnesia. He woke up in a hospital thinking his name was Juan, and he spent the following weeks wandering through the US before finding a job as a diver in the Key West. He would eventually contact Christine, despite not remembering her or his family, but his memory never returned, and the couple ultimately decided to get a divorce. Number 3. Tom Carew from Sterling Lines in Hereford loved to tell tales of the 20 years that he spent with the Hereford-based Special Air Service, and he even wrote an account of his time in Hindu Kush, as well as other areas of Afghanistan. He would recount training to fight against the Soviets in the late 70s, and would go on to publish a book called Jihad, selling 50,000 copies. But Tom would ultimately be exposed as a fraud, his real name being Philip Cesarego. It would come to light that he had conned a group of mercenaries into traveling to Croatia, where they would undertake a black op, which would bring them a large amount of money. The group spent 6 weeks in the country, and, not surprisingly, the operation never took place. But after receiving a $100,000 advance for his book, someone close to Philip decided that enough was enough, and he was exposed as the charlatan that he was. His daughter, Claire, would tell the media that Philip was a fantasist who was trying to make money off the achievements of others. She added that he was obsessed with being in the SAS and even took the selection test a few times but failed. Nonetheless, he would dress the part and frequent pubs where he knew SAS members would hang out. But when his lies were brought to light, he disappeared. In 1991, his family was informed that he had lost his life due to an explosion in a car bomb in Croatia. But this too was a ruse, as he had faked his own demise so that he wouldn't have to pay maintenance to his estranged wife. He had in fact relocated to Belgium, where he was living in a garage under the name of Philip Stevenson. His family only learned that he was alive when they saw him being interviewed on TV under the name Tom Carew, a published author and military expert. In January of 2009, he was found deceased at the age of 55 in his garage after succumbing to accidental carbon monoxide poisoning from a leaking stove. Number 2. William Bates was best known for being the ophthalmologist who designed a method for better eyesight, known as the Bates Method. He graduated from Cornell University in 1881 and would go on to gain his medical degree from Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons 4 years later. On the 30th of August, 1902, he sent a letter to his wife, who was visiting her mother, saying that he'd been called out of town to do some major operations, and he stated that he was excited about the large sum of money that it would bring in. She didn't hear from him again for the following 6 weeks until he was found to be working in Charing Cross Hospital as an assistant. He'd been admitted to the hospital as a patient, and when his wife traveled there to see him, she found that he was suffering from amnesia and was in a haggard state. He had no recollection of his wife or any part of his life, and is said to have told her, quote, "I don't know why you bother, madam, we are strangers." She convinced him to stay with her in her room in a nearby hotel, but 2 days later, he vanished for a second time. She would continue to search for him for years, but would ultimately pass away before learning what had happened to him, reportedly while clutching his portrait. In 1910, Dr. J. Kelly, a friend of Bates, was passing through Grand Forks when he recognized Bates and managed to convince him to return to New York, despite having no memory of living there previously. The two men would open an ophthalmologist practice together, but one associate would state that it was as if a part of Bates's mind had been removed. Bates would eventually remarry and serve as an attending physician at the Harlem Hospital, eventually passing away in 1931, still having no recollection of the life he once lived and left behind. Number 1. Margie Jalovsik was an accomplished violinist, and in 1996, she was a member of the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, seemingly living out her dream. She had just gotten married to a man named Nassar, but tragically, he passed away in a car accident just 6 months later. This was a massive blow to Margie, and she decided to quit her job and leave Michigan, choosing instead to move back to her hometown of Gary, Indiana, where she would find solace with her mother and sister. She started a new job as the manager of a pub owned by her mother, and during this time, she met a man named Randy Yeager. Randy was a high-ranking member of the Outlaws motorbike gang, and Margie had no idea that he was an ex-convict with a long history of criminal convictions. She also didn't know that he and 2 fellow gang members were under federal investigation after 2 of their members had ended the lives of an elderly couple during a robbery. They soon began dating, and Margie started to change, becoming distant towards her family and her customers. On the 9th of June, 1997, Margie and Randy took a trip to Las Vegas, but unbeknownst to her, Randy was fleeing from the law as he was to be indicted for a crime spree committed in the Midwest. By the time he was tracked to Los Angeles, the couple had vanished. 2 weeks later, Margie returned home looking shaken and stated that she feared authorities would soon catch up to Randy. She believed that their apartment had been bugged and that she was being followed. In September of that year, she went missing again, leaving behind her luggage, car, and other personal items, including her inhaler, which she needed as she suffered from asthma. Her family believed that she may have been abducted by Randy, and on several occasions, her mother would receive morning phone calls from an unknown person who would hang up as soon as she answered the phone. Police would eventually track the couple down to a bar south of the US-Mexican border. Thanks to information received from the US Marshals, Baja State police officers traveled to the bar and found the couple relaxing there. They confronted Randy, but he insisted that his name was David Michael Dorian, and when they searched, they found a weapon, causing Margie to flee. A chase ensued towards the couple's house, but she lost control of the car and flipped it 3 times, ending her life after being on the run for 17 years. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.